the leadership of the Labour Party has described the break-in and forceful entry into its national secretariat by the Nigeria Labour Congress as being a criminal act. Well, the party in a statement rejects the claims that the Nigeria Labour Congress owns the Labour Party while accusing the present NLC leadership of being political. Well, part of the statement reads, we are reviewing today's criminal actions and disruption of activities in our national headquarters with our legal department for further actions. Well, what we saw today appears to be a personal vendetta against the national chairman, Julius Abure, who they called several unprintable names, including labeling him a thief. We're certainly going to take legal action on matters of libel, end quote. Well, joining us now, Issa Aremu, who is a former trade unionist and Director General of the Michael Imodu Institute of National Labor Studies in Ilorin. Also with us is Nwagwu, who is the chairman of the civil society organization Partners for Electoral Reforms. Thank you, both of you gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight. Very quickly, let me start with you here in the studio with me, Issa Aremu, former trade union unionist. First off, let's even establish the question as to who owns the Labour Party. Mr. Aremu.
Well, I think first, I think I have to make it clear that once a unionist, I'm always a unionist.
Right, great.
You know, I was a member of the Executive Council of the NLC, former Vice President, General Secretary of Textile Workers Union, and of course, at the point, also the Deputy General Secretary of the Labour Party. That tells you that I was part of the foundation members of the Labour Party.
Great.
And of course, it was clear that Labour Party was conceived by the Labour movement, precisely the Nigeria Labour Congress, and TUC later joined. And the whole vision was that as good as trade union struggle could be to improve the working and living condition of the workers, there is a limitation to what trade unions can do. And Labour now thought, well, it was time for us to also be politically involved. And this is part of a long heritage, you know, right from 1950, the first Labour Party was formed and conceived by #1 Labour man, Michael Imodu. I mean, the #1 Labour man that my institute was named after.
Yes.
So even the founding fathers of the Labour movement knew that the struggle to improve the lot of the workers is not inseparable, you know, from the struggle for demand for.
So are you saying the NLC actually registered the Labour Party?
Obviously,
Okay.
It is clear. But you also know that after the party has been registered, party also has its own autonomy, and it is clear that Nigeria Labour Congress is a very formidable stakeholder within the National Executive Council of the Labour Party. So as to the ownership, I mean, you can't doubt it. Even the name, so-called, originally it was the Democracy Party. We call it later. We later transform it categorically to the Labour Party. You know, so even from the name, you can't doubt the fact that this party conceived by the Labour movement. But there has always been this contestation between the party and of course the Nigeria Labour Congress. Even when I was active within the Nigeria Labour Congress, we had this contestation. And what is new now is the way, what is new is what we saw today. Someone new is that the way the NSC is trying to resolve the issue, which is that using industrial pressure, picketing, which ordinarily used to be identified with workplace method of struggle, applying it now to assert their rights within the Labour Party. It's debatable whether it is right or wrong. I don't think we are to pass judgment here, but what is clear is that NSA has taken this move.
Well, that's a question I'd actually like to ask you, but very quickly before I bring in Nwagwu here. On our earlier program, Prime Time, the guest actually told Somna Sambo that your name, Issa Aremu, appears on the Board of Trustees of the Labour Party. Can you confirm that?
Well, I'm not sure whether it is still valid now, because I was what I want to say is, I've told you before, I was part of the founding executive of the Labour Party. And don't also forget that I contested, for governorship in 2019 in Kwara State under Labour Party. So I mean, clearly it's our party, as the case may be.
It's almost sounding like the NLC as a trade union is being partisan from all indication. They're not entirely neutral. But let me bring in Nwagwu. Let's get his weigh in on this. Good to see you, Nwagwu. What do you make of this leadership tussle or the war over ownership between the NLC and the Labour Party? The NLC, the Nigeria Labour Congress, insists that it owns the Labour Party. What do you make of this tussle?
Well, it's very clear that the Nigerian Labour Congress, from what we know, owns the Labour Party. The history of the Labour Party as it is currently cannot be separated from the People's Social Democratic Party that was first registered by the NLC. And if you ask most of the people today who are in the Labour Party where the certificate of registration of that political party is, they may not be able to tell you. Chief Dan Iwanyanwu, I remember vividly, and that is because at some point I also served in the political commission of the NLC, had returned the certificate of registration back to the NLC, and as we speak now, it is in the cupboard of the General Secretary of the NLC. So the question of ownership is not what is in contest. What perhaps we're seeing is the wrestling of the hijack of the Workers' Party, the party of the working people of Nigeria, from those who have tried to, and this battle has been on since 2014. And it has been an issue, a legal issue. And there's a consent judgment that was issued in 2018, clearly, affirming that the Nigerian Labour Congress is founded this party. So I think that consent judgment is important in citing, in determining and putting to rest the question that you have raised.
Let me just bring it back very quickly, because this question is more relevant to you, Mr. Issa Aremu. I mean, when you say that the NLC owns the Labour Party, are you saying in essence that every worker, every member of the NLC must belong or should belong to the Labour Party? Was that part of the vision at the beginning?
No, well, ideally, I'm very sure that was the conception of the Labour movement, that all its members, become more politically relevant. They need to exercise their democratic right to put their own people in office, pursue their vision of a better society, progressive society. But, in reality, that cannot be, because workers also have freedom of association. Some may be in the Labour Party, some may be in the other parties, so they have that right. But I think the issue at stake now, maybe let's look at the crisis. Right. I think what I gathered here is the NLC is contesting the position of the Labour Party leadership for holding what they call secret convention without consultation, with the leadership of the party.
That's part of the accusation against the national chairman. They're also saying he's guilty of financial rascality, contempt for the leadership
but these
of the NLC.
These are internal party issues, which are normal with all democratic parties. But whether we can resolve that using the same method for resolving the normal workplace issues, in form of strikes, in form of protests, picketing, or you go into the party structure and do your debate, you do your canvassing. That's what the debate is all about. That can we really apply industrial pressures to purely political issues, or vice versa? Can we apply political method to resolving workplace issues?
Ideally, to you, what would you say would be the best approach?
I think ideally, I would really, I've been part of this process, and I know we've been having this contestation, several times. Just like Issa said, by the way we got the, the certificate back to the Labour Party, to the NLC that time, was through democratic discussion, pressure within the party. Not that we necessarily have to go and deploy all the entire union power, to do picketing. Even the image, the fact that Labour Labour NLC is protesting against its own party.
Right.
And it's not based on
like
policy
it's a house
issues.
Divided against itself.
Yeah, it's not. We're not even talking about it's about policy issue, about minimum wage, about decent work, about job creation. I think it's a bit not really tidy. You know, of course, you also know NLC made that point. It's the political commission, not the NLC itself.
Yeah.
Which means we also know the delicate issues involved. But my suggestion would be we need to promote more literacy about political democracy. How do we handle the challenges between industrial struggle as well as political struggle? You know, and that requires, in a democracy, the ability to use different methods for different issues as much as possible.
Yeah.
I think in the democracy, you need more debate, you need concession, you need compromises. You know, and when you don't get it done, possibly you can seek legal redress. You know, but if everybody engages in self-help, deploying power, it becomes survival of the strongest.
Same old culture that we're trying to change.
And for the public perception, you know, that also puts us on the defensive. That next time we are struggling, people will say, is it political? Is it really partisan? When actually it is clear that workers form the movement to defend their workplace interests and at the same time pursue bigger issues in a much more, you know, organized, systematic manner.
Democratic manner.
manner.
Let me bring in, Ezenwa, look, who is afraid of the Labour Party? Is that what's at stake here? Are there external forces that may be looking at how to destabilize the party to some end?
I don't think so. I think contestation within political parties are also democratic, and the means to resolving that, picketing is not anti-democratic either. In terms of whether the Nigerian Labour Congress is overstretching its bounds, you can only draw from the alliances that also exist in other climes. The COSATU, for instance, and the Communist Party of South Africa, who are in a tripartite alliance with the ANC, there are such contestations from time to time, and it cannot be said to be internal, because these parties are vehicles for leadership recruitment for all of us. And if, for instance, you have a leadership that has been enmeshed both internally and externally by different stakeholders calling for the chairman, even for the fact of reputational challenges and issues, I think that is important, that the kind of pressure that a major stakeholder in the Labour Party is bringing to bear needs to happen. So I do not think that is about any external pressure trying to decimate the party. It is indeed because you have even seen a member of the National Working Committee of the party raising issues about the current leadership. And I think it's important that it's not seen from that prism of that it is an internal party issue. It has been externalized, and we have a right now, all of us, to be interested in what is happening there and ensure that there is that reputational baggage that has been foisted on that political party, both by its history, its current history, and even the activities of those who have held that party hostage needs to be taken out. And you can't really say that also all of this also happened under Salami. There was a lot of issue under Chief Dan Iwanyanwu himself when the then governor of Ondo State was going to also go, and they wanted to go and have a convention in Ondo State. This kind of contestations has been on, but I think it is time, to the point it has become a legal contest. So I think it is time that it is resolved in the way that NLC has taken it now, to draw attention to some of these issues that have been papered. There was a mediation by INEC, that after the election, that there is need for them to have a special convention that is all inclusive. So if there is a subversion of that agreement, I think NLC has a right to take the kind of action that he took today.
All right, and this is a question for both of you gentlemen, but let me start with you, Mr. Issa Aremu. A few weeks back, we heard from the president actually cry out, saying to the Labour Party's, not Labour Party, the NLC's leadership, in the person of Joe Ajero, that he should wait until 2027, more or less saying that the NLC is political and not necessarily trade union. Where do you draw the line between you know, the NLC, the trade union, and NLC, the partisan, you know, group. Mr. Issa Aremu.
Yeah, thank you so much. But that now raises the point that I was trying to draw, that, you know, we, as much as possible, Nigeria labor movement has come a long way, you know, and, you know, it is clear that NLC has done very good struggle to fight for the interests of the working class, you know. But what has made the NLC to have staying power over the years is the fact that the public perception, including for the rank and file, is that primarily NLC is formed to defend the interests of the working people. And by the time you have a sitting president expressing that kind of view, even though himself used to be part of the ally of the NLC, that tells you that there is a crisis of perception, you know, of the fact that whether the struggle of NLC is strictly to pursue the interests of the worker or at times to be partisan. Of course, NLC doesn't have to be apologetic, because if other classes are partisan, their political bankers are in politics, traditional are in politics, I mean, not to stop the working people to be in politics. But how you handle that politics is the issue. And I think Issa said as much, you know, it has been a long draw issue. Right from the time founding members of the NLC were this crisis, the contestation between the NLC or the relation between the NLC and the political parties. Under Nwagwu, Absalami. Interestingly, Abure himself comes from the labor movement. He's a comrade. I mean, he used to be a strong member of the neck of NLC. So whoever comes in tomorrow, there will be that contestation. How we handle it is the challenge. And my position is that as much as possible, NLC should deploy enough industrial power to protect the interests of the working people. When it comes to politics, we should play the politics, you know, the way it should be, you know, within the party. You get your membership, you go for vote, you push your position, as the case may be, you know, so that we don't really divide ourselves over issues. And if there will be contestation, and there should be, and for it should be even on policy issues. You know, for instance, what's the position of Labour Party on the new minimum wage? You know, are they complementing the NLC, or NLC is also fashioning that? I mean, I know the Labour Party itself has a governor. It has some senators. I've not had any soundbites about their position about the crisis we're having, about cost of living. Even as NLC is fighting, you know, on the street, I haven't seen any complementary position. So what I'm saying is that if the party and the NLC work separately, then they will be defeated separately. But they need cohesion and solidarity. Otherwise, if we can deploy these energies to fight within ourselves, you can imagine how even the other class that we are contesting will be seen as.
So it does
so
seem...
it's ability to marry the two together as much as possible. Yeah.
Great, very well said. As and why it looks like the NLC, the Labour Party are a divided house, and one wonders what would be the way forward. Yes, the NLC is asking for the resignation of Julius Abure, the chairman of the party right now. But it does seem that this is really not just about, you know, clinching back the leadership of the Labour Party, but about Julius Abure as the chairman of the Labour Party.
It is indeed because of the activities of Julius Abure that the NLC, if perhaps Abure was a bit more tolerant of other stakeholders and the sensitivities that surround all of those issues, in terms of even how he emerged and how he went again back to become the chairman of the party. I think at some point in time there is need for that tolerance, that need for inclusiveness, that respect for the building blocks of, you know, of a center like the Labour Party. And the issue of partisanship that you talked about, of course, politicians exploit everything for advantage. I know that the president understands history a lot. I also know that he's benefited from his alliance with the working people in his political journey. And he also knows that in other climes, if you Brazil, for instance, Australia, UK, America, President Biden himself came clearly to say that he became president on the back of the American workers. And he followed that up by appointing nearly 27 members of the American trade union into his government. So the challenge really is not about whether The cost of Gary, the cost of electricity, the cost of water, the cost of everything is political. And if the Nigerian Labour Congress exists for the welfare interest of its members, who are the majority in the country, it cannot be apolitical. It cannot pretend to be apolitical. It may not come into contestation for political office, but it must play a role in terms of policy direction, in terms of engaging very seriously. And one of the ways to do that is to have an alliance with a credible opposition party. And that is what happens in South Africa. That is what happens in other climes as well. So that narrative of the president and what he thinks in terms of whether there is disunity, uniformity is not, you can't have uniformity in a political party, even the ones that are sharing the same ideology. You can have dissent. You have respectable dissent. And that is what is coming up. We shouldn't be afraid of contestations. We shouldn't be afraid of people saying when there's a moral baggage, the one that even a member of the National Working Committee of that political party has raised and had to address a press conference on those issues, even though there are still allegations. Nobody should have told somebody like Abure to step aside and allow a more decent process to come into the political party and see how these issues are resolved.
Right. Mr. Issa Aremu, yes. Would it be fair to say, look, Mr. Julius Abure has taken the Labour Party to some great heights, to national, if not global prominence, and all of a sudden the NLC wants to maybe enjoy the benefits of that? Is that what is likely at play here?
Well, I think for quite some time now, I've not been involved in the internal party politics of the Labour Party. So, but I think those are internal issues, and that's the point I'm raising that could be discussed more democratically. I mean, there is British Labour Party, the TUC of Trade Union Congress of UK. They are strong members of the Labour Party. You know,
yeah, but initially, speaking of that,
no, I'm just saying
the history of the Labour Party in the UK, they only sponsored politicians, no, precisely, and not necessarily saying we're forming a party.
No, that's precise. No, but they were the founding members. It came from the working people. But whatever the disagreement they have, they don't go into open picketing against each other. That's the point I'm raising.
Great.
The same thing in South Africa, Issa will confirm that there's a way to manage contradiction and contestation in a way that it doesn't become dramatized, in which we are storming the gate of the of a party and the case. So I think the challenge for me is to promote proper, more education, literacy about the labor and political processes, labor and democratic process, and all the method we need to use must be, in the case of Labour Party, we need more solidarity, not in a way that in which we give an impression that comrades are against comrades, comrades on comrades, because that diverts us from the broad issues, of the agenda of the party. And I, as a member of the Labour Party, I was founding member in those days. I don't think there is any provision in the to resolve disputes, through blocking of the gate and picketing, as we have seen today. But again, the discussion continues. My institute is mandated to also promote labor education, and I think we'll create time so that we have a common forum in which not just what is happening within the party, how does labor exercise its democratic right to form parties, inclusive, which is fundamental. Labour Party today has been part of this democratic process in the last 25 years, and you can't ignore it. Even Comrade Soshomole, he started on that with Labour Party. Later on, he had an alliance with ACN, later APC. He became two-term governor, now a senator in a different party. So you can't deny that. But how has it been done over the years that we've gotten this gain is because we manage contestation in a democratic, organized manner, not in this way in which it becomes a war of attrition.
And it looks like that art is being lost now. We'll have to say thank you very much. I have to say thank you so much, both of you gentlemen, for joining us on Newsnight. Issa Aremu is former trade unionist. Why do I keep saying that? Always a comrade.
I see them on minimum wage anyway.
Exactly. DG of the Michael Imodu Institute of National Labour Studies, and of course, Nwagwu joining us of the civil society. Thank you, both of you.